Video Games Recon.
Hello and welcome. My name is Nate from Video Games Recon, and in this video we're going to discuss all the current Advanced Warfare weapons in this class and then pick the best or my favourite weapon in said category, and then create my favourite loadout or class setup for this category of weapon. First off, if you've already seen this intro in a previous video, feel free to skip ahead to the time on screen. Also, each weapon will be reviewed or discussed as the basic model and not including any of the upgraded versions. And please keep in mind this is just my humble opinion, and due to your playstyle, your opinion may differ, which is perfectly fine, and in such case, please don't rage out and lose your shit. Instead, feel free to post your thoughts in the comments. Anywho, without any further ado, let's do it to it. Okay, so as per usual, I'm going to pick my favourite weapon from this class. First off, let's discuss heavy weapons in general. Well, just like most Call of Duty games these days, heavy weapons or LMGs tend not to get a look in, and although I thought it may be different this time due to the new exo movement abilities, unfortunately for the most part this is still the case in Advanced Warfare, aside from in some very specific circumstances. And what I mean by that is in terms of new energy weapons, as although far too weak in general game modes, the energy weapons are straight up beasts in hardcore mode, and the LMGs are still useful in classic game modes in suppressing lines of sight. But like most weapons, the heavy weapons are often eclipsed by the assault rifles in most regular game modes. That's not to say heavy weapons aren't any good, they just tend to get sidelined for the more manoeuvrable and flexible assault rifles in Advanced Warfare, as there is less of a need to suppress areas and lines of sight with heavy weapons due to the new verticality and breakneck nature of the maps. With that, let's quickly go through the weapons before I pick my favourite. First up, there's the EM1, which shoots what we would call a traditional laser beam and has no ammo, instead having a cooldown time, but is a little weak aside from in the hardcore playlist. Then there's the PYTEAK, which, although near impossible to pronounce, is your typical LMG, and pretty much does what it says on the tin: high damage, a little slow and plenty of ammo. This thing also comes with a cool hood as standard. However, the recoil and muzzle flash is very distracting and obscures a lot of your vision, which is a real downer for this weapon. The XMG, well, this thing's just plain weird, as it's a dual wield LMG, something akin to a weak death machine. However, this thing cannot ADS without going into lockdown mode, thus being unable to move, leaving you a sitting duck. So aside from messing about with, I'd give this one a pass. The EPM3 is another energy weapon, but instead of firing a laser beam like the EM1, the EPM3 fires bolts of plasma akin to a regular bullet, and thus this weapon, aside from all its fancy wrapping paper and styling, plus its lack of ammo / cooldown mechanic, is essentially a marksman's rifle, which is unfortunate as marksman rifles don't tend to make a lot of sense in this game, and thus this weapon is again only really useful inside of the hardcore playlist. So that just leaves me with my favourite heavy weapon, which in general would have to be the Ameli, with one caveat, which is the EM1, as in hardcore mode this thing is so OP and by far the best gun in this playlist beyond even assault rifles in my opinion. But as a large proportion of people don't even play the hardcore playlist, I'd have to give it to the Ameli, as it's basically the closest heavy weapon to an assault rifle, which as we all know in Advanced Warfare is king, as the Ameli has controllable recoil, lots of ammo, good damage, manoeuvrability and handling, making it overall the best heavy weapon. And although you may struggle to justify using it opposed to an assault rifle due to its comparative movement speed, which can be mitigated somewhat with lightweight and the blast suppressor / exo movement abilities, it is still a good weapon if used and equipped properly, particularly on game modes like Domination. Okay, so with that, let's get into my favourite loadout for this class. FYI, this part of the video will be less scripted and more off the cuff, so let's get into it, shall we? Okay, so this is the best loadout for the heavy category. This is my best loadout, I should say, and again, what I think is the best weapon in that category. Again, it's a bit of a toss-up between this and the EM1, but the EM1 is specifically only good for hardcore, as previously explained. So yeah, so I've gone with the Ameli because, you know, it's a pretty beast. It's probably the best heavy. The PYTEAK or PYTEAK, whatever you want to call it, is decent, but I really don't like the recoil and the flare, the muzzle flare. Really, it puts me off. I like getting shots and stuff, especially if you're trying to suppress. And the others, the XMG is just a bit of a gimmick, so yeah, so I've passed on that. I mean, the energy weapons are decent, but really only for hardcore. So right, let's get into the attachments. As usual, I've gone with 3 attachments. It's, I wouldn't say rare, but well, yeah, probably rare that I don't go with 3 attachments. So the first one is foregrip. Again, foregrip makes every weapon better, and specifically for a heavy weapon that you're going to fire a lot and it's going to have a lot of recoil, a foregrip's really going to help you out and you know, keep you stable and on target. So the next one is rapid fire. You know, I was umming and ahhing about this, but it's quite good actually. Mixed with foregrip, it really gives you a lot of damage and helps you put, you know, really put some bullets down range and stuff. Especially good again for suppression, although you can kind of run out of your ammo pretty quick, but there's a lot of ammo in a mag, and the Ameli doesn't fire too fast, so yeah, I think you can get away with it. It just gives you that extra powerhouse, like, you know, at those medium to long ranges and stuff. It can be quite shaky at the long ranges because of it, but you know, I think it's worth it just to get the bullets out there. Plus it helps you out at close range a bit as well, just because of the pure damage factor. Okay, next is stock. I put that on as my 3rd attachment, and basically because your movement speed's a bit slower, I put stock on, so when you're ADSing you've got a lot faster movement, which I find really useful, specifically if you're going to be suppressing, because you're going to be suppressing from aiming down sights all the time. So it can be really useful to just stay in your ADS or whatever, in your zoomed in, and just, you know, throw those bullets down. You've got a lot more movement, so I find that good, a good thing to go with. Sometimes I like to put on LMGs a suppressor, just so, you know, you've got that power and stuff, and you can be silent, so you can just sort of, like, I wouldn't say camp, but you can just sort of, you know, hold down a line of sight and you don't show up on the radar as much. So, but I didn't feel like it was beneficial to this gun because of its particular stats at range. I think it's got the lowest range in general out of all the, yeah, it's got the lowest range out of all the heavy, so I didn't really feel like I wanted to go with that on this one. Okay, the first perk, lightweight, I put that on everything as usually discussed. Second perk, fast hands, I like to put this on most things if possible. Blast suppressor, again with this game it's just something you want to do, otherwise you're going to be showing up on that radar quite a lot. And scavenger again, it's one of my other go-tos. You know, there are specific perks that I just love to go with, especially on this game. So okay, and the XO ability is XO overclock, again because you're going to be moving slow, you're going to be running slow. XO overclock will help you get to basically the firefights, which you can feel a bit like, you know, a bit of a fucking caveman, like getting there really slowly. But yeah, so overclock really helps you to get there faster, because you do feel heavy. Heavy is the term. You do feel heavy, like you're carrying a lot of weight. So the next one is the secondary weapon, and we put a secondary on. I don't usually do it for most weapons, but because the reload times with heavies, not energy weapons of course, but general heavies, is really slow, I went with a secondary weapon because sometimes you just haven't got the time to wait to reload, even with fast hands. So that's why I put secondary, and because more often than not that's going to be up close range, I figured I'd go with the PDW where range doesn't, you know, it's not so much of a factor. Okay, and the score streak I've gone for is the sentry turret. Basically, again, if you're using this for suppression, you know, a sentry turret's a no-brainer because you can whack that down on one line of sight, that's suppressing that line of sight, and you can go to the other line of sight. And these things can really help you team out. I mean, suppression is less useful, I'd say, in Advanced Warfare because of the XO movements, but you know, it still can be useful to do, especially depending on what sort of playlists you're doing. So if you're doing like classic playlists, it's a lot more useful than it is on regular playlists. So yeah, that is my heavy weapon class loadout. But never mind what I think, what do you think of the guns in Advanced Warfare so far? Feel free to post your thoughts on the weapons in this class in the comments section. So, that just leaves me to say, if you enjoyed this video, please help support us by liking, sharing, favouriting and subbing for more BS of a similar nature. Thank you and goodbye.